I'm Larry Menti. Welcome to Jersey Matters. Some call it assisted suicide. Others call it the rights of the terminally ill to have death with dignity. It all depends on which side of the issue you are on, but that issue has come to New Jersey and is being debated in Trenton as we speak. Here to talk more about it is Sal Anderton, who is with Compassion and Choices, which is an advocacy group for end-of-life rights, and Susan Boyce, who is a patient and also an advocate. Thank you so much both for being here. And Susan, well, I want to start with you, if I may, because I just asked you before we started if you were diagnosed with a terminal illness, and you said yes, you were.
Yes, I have been diagnosed. I've known for 10 years that I have a very rare genetic disorder called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, which has left me with about 29% of a normal lung function at this moment.
You said 10 years.
Yes. It's a very slow-moving disease, so it's not like some of the other diseases where you get sick and it's very quick. I was initially told I had 5 years, so I'm 5 years over my limit.
Well, that's wonderful news, and I hope you have a long life, and I hope that the diagnosis was wrong. You are advocating for this bill in case the diagnosis was not wrong.
That's correct, right? Because of this disease, I continue to lose lung function, and if there's a slim chance I could get a lung transplant, but if that doesn't happen, then the end of life for people with this disease can be quite prolonged and quite painful. And I would get great comfort out of knowing that I had that option. And
I want to get to Sal in a second, but I have one last question for you. I know that a lot of people that have made the choice that you think you might have to make are not just doing it for themselves, but doing it for their loved ones as well, so that they don't have to go through it either emotionally and or financially. Are you in that position as well?
I certainly don't want my loved ones to have to suffer, that's for sure, but I really do feel this is a decision I own personally myself. So I feel like that, they support me in whatever it is that I would choose, but it's a decision I own.
And we'll get back to that in a moment. How many people in New Jersey currently, and I know that there's thousands more in the future, are facing decisions like this?
Well, our group is working with a handful of terminally ill advocates currently as advocates here advancing the legislation in New Jersey. Some folks are private. Obviously, this is a very private issue. Some folks are available and are public, like Susan. Others are not. And I've worked on this issue in New Jersey for over a year now. And frankly, there are folks that were advocating with us a year ago who are no longer with us. So I don't know numbers specifically, but folks certainly are coming out and becoming more public about their need and their want for this right.
And I guess in many ways the numbers really don't matter. As if there are only a few, you would still advocate for those few. It doesn't matter if it's in the thousands. And certainly when the law, I think, passed in Oregon, there weren't thousands, there were hundreds.
Well, to give you an example, last year, and Oregon is one of the 5 states that has aid in dying as a lawful medical practice. And in that state last year, in 2014, there were about 150 or 160 prescriptions written. And only about 2/3 of the folks who requested those prescriptions actually consumed the medication. About 1/3 just have it and either die of natural causes or die without taking it.
And that's an important point. Something that you just pointed out, that the final decision and the final action has to legally be by that person themselves.
Oh, without a doubt. The law makes that clear. I mean, this proposal here in New Jersey isn't requiring anybody to do anything, right? It's simply expanding options for patients who may decide that that's a right or an option that's right for them. It's much like, you could always say to your doctor, no, I don't want another round of chemotherapy, or you could say to a doctor, you can unplug a respirator. It's a choice to control your medical treatment. This, we view, is no different.
We just heard what he said about many people can't do it when it gets to that point. Are you confident you can do this?
I don't know that I can't definitely say at this moment what I will or would not do. What I feel strongly is that having that choice be something that's available is what's important. I would get a great deal of comfort out of knowing that I did have control over things, and if my health deteriorated to such a point that living was very, very painful, that I had an option I could exercise.
Let me take the flip side of what you just said and the fact that it gives you comfort. Does it give you anxiety? Does it give you discomfort to think that that is not available in this state? And if so, would you move somewhere else where it would be available to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, yes, it gives me anxiety that it's not available here in New Jersey. And I don't know whether I would move. It would depend on a lot of circumstances, obviously. But it would be something I would consider.
Let's talk about the legislation and the laws in other states. Are they all similar? Is there differences?
So currently there are 5 states that have aid in dying law in the country. They're all essentially similar. Our proposal here in New Jersey has a few more safeguards like written reports, longer waiting period, things like that that build in more safeguards than the Oregon law, which is typically considered the standard or model law. Our law, if it were passed in this form, would be a little bit stricter than the other states currently.
And how would it be stricter?
Longer waiting period, requirement for if there's a question of mental competency for a written report, written evaluation. You know, so more hurdles in a sense for a patient and their caregivers to jump to ensure that it's a decision that's being made competently and seriously.
Let's walk through the steps because I think it's important. So first you have to be diagnosed with a terminal illness, right?
Correct. There has to be a diagnosis of a terminal illness as well as a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. Susan is an example. She has a terminal illness, but she doesn't yet have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live.
So a doctor would have to tell you you have 6 months to live at this point for you even to be eligible for this, and then another doctor has to confirm that. Is that right?
Correct. So there's a second opinion, if you will, that has to confirm. If there's a question of mental competency, let's say in a patient who might have dementia or some mental illness, schizophrenia, whatever the case may be, if there's a question of mental competency, that has to be addressed and ruled out by a mental health professional. The patient obviously has to be an adult and a New Jersey resident, and the patient has to be able to self-administer the medication so that we're not talking about a doctor or a caregiver imposing medication on a patient. The patient has to be able to self-administer. So the eligibility requirements, Larry, are really kind of narrow, right? All that we just discussed, as well as the self-administration. So you rule out patients with dementia, you know, advanced neurological diseases, or folks who can't self-administer.
And an important thing in the laws in the other states is the insurance part of it. It would not be listed as a suicide, right?
That's right. And truthfully, you know, life insurance companies are addressing this now and living with this in those 5 states that currently have it. So it's really not an issue. But yes, in order for it not to be an issue, the cause of death is the underlying illness, not the fact that the patient chose aid in dying.
We didn't get a chance to talk about some of the people that have a problem with this legislation. Could you stick around for another segment? Can we talk about that when we come right back?
Sure.
We'll talk more about the I keep calling it dignity with dying. I know it has different names in different states, but I'll go with that for the moment. Aid in dying is another way that it's being described. We'll talk about the legislation currently in Trenton and the opposition to it when Jersey Matters continues.